boys and girls. Miss Kathy here from Shaler North Hills Library. We are doing another episode in our Superheroes of STEAM program. And we did Lewis Braille. We now have a book about Paper Son, the inspiring story of Tyrus Wong, immigrant and artist. Now, I'm sure you've never heard of Tyrus Wong. I had never heard of Tyrus Wong, but he went on to be an artist with Disney. And if you've ever seen the film Bambi, you have seen Tyrus Wong's work. And we're going to read about his life and then talk about his whole experience. So let's get started. He dedicates this book to his parents and their journey, because as you're going to see, he had a very big journey he made. Before he became an artist named Tyrus Wong, he was a boy named Wong Yi, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing these Chinese names right, who traveled with his father across a vast ocean to America, clutching a bundle of papers in his hand. Right there. The papers were not for drawing monkeys, which he loved to do. Let's just look at maybe the one set of pages here at a time. They were papers describing the life of another Chinese boy whom Zheng Yu was pretending to be. He had to memorize every word. In 1919, Chinese immigrants were not allowed into the United States unless they could prove they were citizens of high status, a scholar, a merchant, a business owner, or the child of such a citizen. So the boy's father pretended to be a merchant named Luk Yit. Wang Yo became his son, Luk Tao Yo. He was now a Zijal, a paper son. Every night, the boy studied the answers to exacting questions. What are the names of the families who live in your village? Who is the leader of your district? How far is it to the next village? The immigration officials will ask me the same questions and compare our answers to make sure you are my son, his father said. If they do not match, you will be sent back and never see Gumsan. Gumsan means Gold Mountain in Cantonese. That was what the Chinese called America because of the opportunities there. And Cantonese is a language that they speak in China. See, his father would say, pointing to the horizon, life in Gumsan will be like a blank paper, and we will decide how to mark it. The boy followed his father's gaze to where water met the sky. Maybe he would spot a glimmer of Gold Mountain, too. At last they arrived at Angel Island. His father, who had been in America before, cleared immigration quickly. But the boy was held back. And as we'll learn after, Angel Island is where all the Chinese immigrants came when they first arrived in America. There he is, looking out the window all by himself. Scared and alone, Gang Yi was taken to a wooden house filled with strangers. There he waited. Days turned to weeks. The new land was not what he expected. The streets were not lined with gold. The barracks were crowded and dirty. He missed his father very much. There was no drawing paper, no ink, no paint. He watched the sun move slowly across the sky, always arching back toward the home he'd left behind. Didn't have his dad for any of that time, nobody that he knew. Finally, Gang Yi was brought in front of 3 men who bombarded him with questions. How many windows does your house have? What direction does your village face? Where did you go to school? The boy was nervous, but he remembered all his answers from the coaching papers his father had given him. He was released from Angel Island. His father was waiting for him with arms outstretched. Now we must look for opportunities, he said. There they are, running to meet each other. At school in Sacramento, which is a town in California, Wong Ji-yo was given a new name by his teachers, a name that combined his real name and his paper name. Ta Yao was Americanized to Tyrus Wong. Tyrus did not like school. He preferred sketching to science, doodles to diagrams, art to arithmetic. Tyrus's father had been well educated in China, but to be a Chinese immigrant was to be a servant, a laundryman, a waiter, and to find these jobs he often had to travel far, leaving Tyrus alone for months. Can you imagine being left all alone at his age? Still, his father believed life in America could be like a blank paper. One day he brought home a brush and made Tyrus practice Chinese calligraphy. Because they could not afford ink and paper, Tyrus wrote with water on old newspapers. And after the paper dried, his father would say, "One more time." His father borrowed enough money to send Tyrus to Otis Art Institute in Los Angeles. Tyrus learned to paint and draw in the Western style, smudging thick charcoal to form shadows and mirroring the way light hits objects. He also studied artwork from China's Song Dynasty, when watercolors and simple lines communicated much by showing little. The lushness of a flower could be felt with gradual increases of color, and mountains could loom in the distance with a few jagged lines. In the evenings, Tyrus mopped the floor as the school janitor. He swirled the soapy water around, the mop dancing in his hands like a paintbrush. That's his imagination at work as he mops the floor, drawing in his mind. Tyrus graduated at the top of his class and began working as an in-betweener at Walt Disney Studios. In the early days of animation, in-betweeners drew the frames in between a movie's key art. The same scenes over and over, with only small changes each time to create the feeling of movement. The work was boring and his eyes throbbed. Because that's how animation is made. Thousands of drawings with only a little bit of change each time. One day, Tyrus heard that Disney was making a movie called Bambi about a young deer who must learn to survive without his mother. But the animators were having trouble creating the backgrounds. Tyrus thought about the mother he had left behind in China, and the father who always believed in him. He thought about his style of painting, one that combined East and West, his past and his present. Tyrus saw an opportunity. He spent days painting landscapes. Instead of drawing a forest scene leaf by leaf, tree by tree, he created the feeling of woods and mountains with sparse brushstrokes and soft watercolors. Where other artists might use 10 strokes of a brush, he used 5. The result was breathtaking. Walt Disney loved it. He instructed his animators to follow Tyrus's style. Bambi became a groundbreaking film. Audiences and critics gushed about the art, how it communicated so much by showing so little, how you could almost smell the mossy green of the woods and hear the rushing water of the brook. But in the end, Tyrus was credited only as a background artist. Walt Disney Studios fired Tyrus after an employee strike, even though he did not participate. It would be many years before the world saw Tyrus Wong for the artist that he was. But Tyrus never stopped painting, and not just on paper. Throughout his life, he would draw his art on ceramics, silk scarves, murals, menus. Tyrus always found new ways to leave his mark. As an old man, Tyrus discovered a love of kites, caterpillars and pandas, fish and butterflies. He would tell people he wanted to be looking up. How else could one see Gold Mountain? On sunny days, you could often find Tyrus Wong on the beach, facing the ocean he crossed so long ago, flying a large, colorful kite he'd made himself, glimmering gold where water met the sky. Boy, that's a long one, isn't it? Very big kite. And that is the end of the story, but one of the things I love about these types of books is there's always additional information at the back. So let's look at these pictures here first. Tyrus's immigration card. That's what he had to carry with him into the country. Tyrus posing for a Venus watercolor pencils advertisement. That's from 1953. This one down here, Tyrus and his family in 1957. Tyrus front right, that would be there, pictured with schoolmates in 1923. And Tyrus with an owl kite in 2002 when he was 92 years old. Now let's read about the author's note. When Tyrus Wong was just 9 years old, he boarded the SS China with his father, seeking a brighter future in the United States. They immigrated during a time when the Chinese Exclusion Act, the first federal law designed to prevent an ethnic group from entering the country, was in full effect. So that means excluding someone is keeping them out. And our government actually passed a law that wanted to keep the Chinese people out for various reasons. And that was going on when he immigrated. That means come into our country to live. Tyrus's father knew that some exceptions were made, mainly for those of high social status or blood relatives of American citizens. So if you were an important person or had relatives here, you might be able to get in. To meet the criteria for entry, many immigrants assumed false identities. That means they had to take on false names and pretend to be someone they weren't. Forged papers that raised someone's status or falsely documented family ties to Americans were sold at a premium price, creating a black market for paper sons and daughters, meaning you were only a son on a piece of paper or a daughter. From 1910 to 1940, over 170,000 Chinese were processed through Angel Island Immigration Station outside San Francisco Bay. That's where they all came into. An estimated 80 to 90% of them were paper sons and daughters, among them Tyrus Wong and his father. From those humble beginnings, Tyrus would go on to graduate from Otis Art Institute with honors. In a time where most Chinese immigrants worked as manual laborers, this was no small feat. So most Chinese immigrants had to get jobs doing hard work, doing hard labor, not like office jobs where they sit and work in an office. But he was able to go on and graduate with honors from the art school because his father worked hard and saved him a lot of money. He had left his mother back in China, which must have been extremely hard for him, don't you think? In 1938, Tyrus got a job at Walt Disney Studios as a lowly in-betweener. When Disney began creating Bambi, Tyrus saw his chance and impressed Walt Disney with a series of magnificent landscape paintings. Promoted to inspirational sketch artist, he spent 2 years illustrating hundreds of scenes that would influence every part of the motion picture down to the music and special effects. In the film's credit, he is listed merely as a background artist, despite his much larger role. His art direction, inspired by his knowledge of Chinese art, would in turn inspire a generation of American animators. So he didn't really get the full credit he deserved. After Disney, Tyrus continued to work in Hollywood, illustrating scripts and storyboards for over 2 decades at Warner Brothers, meaning in the films that they were making. He also painted ceramics, holiday cards, magazine covers, scarves, and menus. And after he retired, he discovered a passion for kite building. He worked for Hallmark cards for many, many years. In 2016, Tyrus passed away at the age of 106. 106 years old when he died, after a lifetime of creating art. I first learned about Tyrus Wong through his obituary in the New York Times. That means what they print in the paper about you after you've gone to let people know that you died. He was one of the preeminent Chinese-American artists of our time, and yet I had never heard of him. Growing up, the only child of immigrants, I had very few picture books available to me about the accomplishments of fellow Chinese Americans, much less artists. I wanted to change that for future generations. My own parents immigrated to the United States from a village just 40 miles away from Tashan, where Tyrus and his father were from. In our families, I see the same resilience and ability to thrive in a new country that did not welcome them. Despite the lack of recognition throughout his career, Tyrus Wong always found a way to express himself through art. His story reminds us that immigrants, wanted or not, leave an essential mark on the masterpiece that is this nation. Everybody coming in has a role to play. And then the illustrator wrote a note too. Tyrus Wong has been a huge influence on me as an Asian American artist working in animation and illustration. I still remember being captivated by Tyrus's impressionistic work on Bambi and how the atmospheric brushstrokes brought the sights, sounds, and smells of the forest to life in my childhood imagination. Throughout his career, Tyrus drew inspiration from within. He remained honest to his craft and his Eastern heritage, paving the way for more widespread acceptance of Asian American artists. His story encourages me to never stop creating, and I hope his work is cherished for many future generations. So both the author and the illustrator, the person who wrote this book and the person who drew the pictures, are of Asian American descent. And they tried to illustrate it in a style that might make us think about how Tyrus drew. So that is Paper Son, the inspiring story of Tyrus Wong, immigrant and artist. I certainly never knew anything about him, but now I'm going to watch Bambi and see if I can see what they mean by the way his lush brushstrokes in a very few lines did what other people would do in more lines. Now you can print out this packet of activities to go along with it. It has a bunch of different things, mostly for you to do online. You can, since we're talking about people coming into the country, the immigrants from China, you can go onto a bunch of different sites And this first one here, you can look at the photos of some other Chinese immigrants from this same time period as when Tyrus came, and actually read the interviews of what they said when they were asked questions about what their experience coming into this country was like. You can listen to, on the computer, actual poems written by people at Angel Island by the Chinese immigrants. There are 4 of them, and you can choose to hear them either in the Mandarin language or the Cantonese language. So I thought that was really cool. They're written by them, and you can hear them being read out loud to you, and they would do a much better job at pronunciation than I would. The third one on there is a great site from the Library of Congress showing more about the Chinese immigration experience. It's for a little bit older people. They're learning about their social customs and the problems that they face, that sort of thing. Watch a video about the Angel Island immigration experience at the YouTube website listed here. And then you should try to check out, if you can, with an adult's help, of course, any of these, looking at other examples of Tyrus Wong's artwork. And there are a number of sites available. I just put on some of the ones that I thought showed him best and variety of things that he did. And you will see as you do that, there is a number of Hallmark Christmas cards, actually, even though he may not have celebrated Christmas as a person. He did a lot of beautiful drawings and sold some of the favorite cards in certain years that Hallmark produced. You, as the art project to tie in with this, I'm not going to make you sit here and watch mine, but you could paint with watercolor and experiment with brush strokes and things like Tyrus Wong did. And maybe you can pull up some of his artwork on the computer and try to copy it and see if you can get artwork that looks like his. He painted, especially, it says, Christmas cards for Hallmark. You could make a card for someone. Maybe it's a birthday card since Christmas is over. And then, of course, you can watch the Bambi movie, and you can do this animated movie word search, which has the 4th one down there is Bambi, as that was the one that he worked on so closely. There is also an Angel Island Write an I Wish poem. Put yourself in Tyrus's shoes by writing a poem from his point of view. That means what he would be thinking about his time at Angel Island. Remember, when he was held there, he didn't have anybody that he knew with him at all. No one from his family, no friends. It says he didn't have any paper to draw on. Just imagine what an experience that would have been for a young boy. Being in a situation and not knowing what was going to happen to him, and being there for weeks at a time in a foreign country. He didn't have food like he was used to, for sure. He could probably hardly speak to the people around him because he didn't speak their language. Jot down thoughts about what he sees and hears, what emotions and memories he might have, what he misses from his country, and what he hopes for in America. Then shape those thoughts into a poem in which the first 2 words of each line are I wish. Things that he wishes for, and things that you think he would wish for if you were in that situation. And lastly, you can draw and color a kite based on the ones Tyrus Wong created. And you can see lots of examples of those in the book that we just read, or actually real ones online. Use the following questions to help plan your kite. What will the subject be? For example, will it be an animal, a bird, a fantasy thing like a dragon? What colors will you use? What designs or patterns? Now, the logistics, the way to make it work, you have to think about too. Where would the strings attach to it so that it doesn't just go flying off into space? And what would the tail look like? And how is this kite that you are drawing inspired by Tyrus? What do you think makes it look like one of his kites? What do you like about his kites? When you look at the examples, there were some examples at the end of this book, It even showed him, there's some color ones on the end pages of the book. Let me see if it's the same ones on this page. But then it showed other ones in the book. There's his owl kite in the picture of him holding it. I think that one's actually pictured on the back here. But that would be very cool to see that swooping down at you from up in the sky, huh? If you were flying it. And then inside the book, it showed us one of him standing there with huge, long kite. Looks like some sort of dragon. And it showed a few other ones, I think, earlier on, too. Similar one to that one that we saw. There's the owl and the panda. Other ones that were in the book, so, but you could find more online. Okay, so that was Paper Sun and some of the activities and things that went along with it. So hopefully you can get a copy of this book yourself. You can place a hold on it in the library system, or just read back through us reading it together and do some of the activities and be inspired to create some art of your own. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next Superheroes of STEAM program. This has been Miss Kathy from Shaler North Hills Library, and thanks for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye.